What's up everyone, Skizzers here, and welcome to the Playbook, a series that goes over strategy, habit building, and tools you can use to get yourself top fragging and carrying your team in no time. In this video, we're going to be going over offensive versus defensive playstyles, as in aggro and passive, and what amount of tactical gameplay kind of fits in with all that. So I thought the best place to kind of go over that would be defensive side mid on Ascent. And the reason I thought this would be great is this middle entry point gives you a lot of different options as far as where you could be looking. So to kind of put it into perspective here, I kind of look at it as almost like either an arc like this or a scale where you have offensive play, aggro play style on the right, you have defensive passive on the left, and then you have tactical, and that's kind of this like arc over here. And you can be one or the other, a mix of two. Like one of my buddies is a very defensive passive player. So what he likes to do, and by the way, there's no right or wrong answer in your playstyle. It's just something you want to be aware of so you can make proper decisions that complement your playstyle versus trying to do things that don't really match what you like to play like. So as far as passive player goes, passive player might be holding mid back here and kind of just giving up the center mid area and just holding a tight angle over here towards market side. It could be by pizza box, by pizza, and be holding kind of an angle like right here where you're giving this entry point. Defensive and passive play is about giving your enemies room and then punishing them as they funnel through the kind of almost trap you've set up, right? So your idea, your thought, is you've given up mid control and you're just sitting here holding a tight angle. Now, if you're going to push that, remember this is our arc here, right? And if you're gonna start pushing towards the aggressive, adding more tactical play into your defensive play style, you might actually hold an angle more like this, where you're not actively peeking, but you're just trying to hold this really tight angle in case the enemy does run through here. And this is kind of the tactical meter scale, as I like to kind of put it, is what's going to determine how far you sway on each side. So like for me personally, I'm a very aggressive player, and I probably sit right about here. If this was like a 100, like if this was 100 and it dropped down to 0 here and 0 here, I'm like a 50. I'm like kind of in the middle. I do some stuff that's more tactical play, but I'm usually pretty aggressive. I'm going to finish covering the defensive and passive play first. So if you add a little more tactical, you're a little more aggressive with that, right? You're going to be positioning to hold tight angles. You're going to be positioning, maybe you have an op, right? If you're a defensive player, you might be holding this angle where you're kind of giving up most of mid, where the aggressive player like me would either be holding this angle or I would be holding this angle. And then I would also have the option of, if I was holding this as an aggressive player, I might move forward there and then wide peek on the side here. Aggressive players typically like to take peeks and take gunfights because in their mind they should be able to outgun the enemy player who is, on the other team. Where defensive players may still have the same confidence in their gunplay, but they rather play a lot slower, a lot more passive, and therefore you're going to be holding different angles. You're not going to be holding these like kind of out there in the front line kind of angles. You'll be kind of back, you'll give up mid, and you'll be like, well, if somebody runs through here, right, they're just going to kind of sit right here. You're like, we'll give them the opportunity to feel like they're in control, and then as soon as they cross this threshold, you get them, right? And so that's kind of the defensive playstyle kind of thought process. Now for aggressors, right, like I said, we want to take these harsher angles. So when the round starts, let's just go ahead and end that phase. So when the round starts, aggressive players would immediately kind of go and start looking to either take peeks and fights there, or if they started back here, they'll take a fight over here, or they'll kind of hold an angle where they're kind of peeking in and out, right? You might just like peek out and take a shot or two towards top mid. And over on this side, you might be taking an angle here, right? Like people like to sit right where I pinged there in that corner. A lot of people like to kind of swing that way. So as an aggressive player, you might like be peeking in and out to try to hit that angle. Where the defensive player might sit right here and just hold. Now you can shoot through this wall, by the way, if you didn't know. And you can tell because the bullet penetrations looks like that with the kind of darker holes. And you can't bullet penetrate something if it sparks. So see, no spark, spark, just in case you didn't know. So you can actually spray this corner from the other side. So a defensive player might be holding this angle, right? Where you've given up control over the mid area, but if an enemy's pushing in, they might look here and they're exposed, right? And you can, and as an attacker, you can kind of sort of see what's going on doing this. And you can kind of see what's going on there, but you can't actually get that full thing unless you peek inwards. So usually attackers will clear kind of like this, where you'll see that way. You'll kind of scan those two areas, hit pizza, and then look this way. Anyway, so defensive players might be holding this angle. They might be holding up here, kind of over in this angle. And it's totally fine to play that way. I kind of do that blend, like I said. I'm kind of right here on that scale. If this is offense, defense, and tactical, I'm kind of right about there, where most rounds I feel most comfortable that I start here. If I hear people on B-Link, I like to peek and try to, you know, take the gunfire there. If I have an op, I'll sit because the spawn area is like right about here, somewhere right about here. I think it's the top of these stairs is the spawn line. So if I have an op, I'll just sit like right there and I'll hold that angle. And aggressive players like to take advantage of the way networking works. So in this game, with ping and all that kind of taken into consideration, the aggressive player is going to want to know about how angles work, how the networking setup. Is there a peeker's advantage in the game? And there is one in this game. It's very prevalent. A lot of people have shown that. It's not as bad as some other games, but it's kind of technical. There's videos on YouTube that go over peeker's advantage. But so somebody who's aggressive is going to want to know that kind of information, peeker's advantage. They're going to want to know and research stuff like that, because they want to know that if somebody is right here, like, they have an advantage swinging, you know? Like if they swing and shoot that guy down, they want to know that's an option. Where a defensive player doesn't actually really care how most of that works, because how peeker's advantage works is the peeker has the advantage. It's in the name, right? So if you're playing defensive or passive and you're holding an angle, you're innately putting yourself at a disadvantage. But if the enemy doesn't react in the milliseconds that they have an advantage over you, then it's an even fight. And the millisecond differences are pretty low usually, but say I'm looking here and we have somebody like right there, right? That's the defender. And I'm looking here and I see him. If I'm turning, by the time I go from point A to point B, my millisecond advantage is probably already up at that point. And the defender that's been sitting here is going to see me and be able to gun me down no problem, right? So it really depends on how you like to play the game. Like I said, I'm very aggressive. So on Ascent, a lot of people play B-Link over here, the connector area. And so what I like to do is I like to kind of look for peaks like this. And if I really want to get aggressive because I play Jet, I'll smoke over here. I'll kind of smoke over near Cat just to block the box. And then I'll like dash through this way and I'll like check corners and angles and all that if I'm playing really, really aggressive. If I want to be a little more defensive, but you know, I am an aggressive player, I might just chill back here and take peeks and do it that way. Usually I don't challenge top mid unless I have an op or something where I feel like I can win this duel really easily. But those are just some examples around this particular area about how those things can change. So like when I personally, if I play really defensive, you know, as I said, if we're looking at the scale, a pretty aggressive player. If I start trying to play more over here on the defensive side, it's actually really uncomfortable for me to just sit here and try to wait for somebody. I do it sometimes as a mix-up, and usually what that involves is I might be sitting like up on top of here, and there'll be a smoke, and I'll be kind of chilling here and to see if they push through. And if they do push through and I kill them, I'll do something like that where I'll re-smoke the entrance and then play on the other side and kind of ping pong that, or I might retreat back to pizza box. And that's kind of like the defensive play style that that you would see coming from somebody like me, because I'm still pretty aggressive. Where usually what happens is this area gets smoked, so I'll come over as an aggressive player and I'll be looking, and this gets smoked. And the first thing I do is I actually enter the smoke and I sit inside of here, because if they push through, I'm already going to be ready for them, right? Now, jet smokes are pretty like they're filled inside, right? Where usually, a lot of times at least, I see omens smoking this, or brimstones, which are also pretty dense for smokes. But they'll smoke this area, and then I'll just walk in and sit in here, and then as it's starting to expire, I'll kind of go back like this. And I'll keep holding that angle. I might peek out, kind of see what information I can gather. And then if, like I said, if it gets smoked again, I kind of sit in this area and I wait right about here, kind of line up where the enemies would probably be coming from. That's kind of how I like to play this mid area. So those are things just to think about as far as offensive and defensive personalities and playstyles. So you're one or the other, usually, and then with a little bit of the tactical in between. And as long as you can identify that, you can start playing angles that are going to complement that. So if we're retaking and I'm a defensive player, I might kind of retake slowly here, look, and then maybe slow walk out, that kind of deal. As an aggressive player, you do the same peaks, but once this looks pretty clear, you go, okay, this whole area is clear, the next spot's going to be here, and then in sight, right? So a defensive player might take it kind of slow, might use a little more utility if they have utility. Aggressive players typically will look, because they feel like they're going to win the gunfight. So they're going to look, they're going to try to get the kill and go right over, you know, and try to take out who's ever on the bomb site for retakes. But anyway, this is just something I want to go over. It's something interesting to think about, depending on what your playstyle is and what you like to do, and you'll kind of get the hang of, you know, what your playstyle. I mean, if you just really think about it, of what angles you typically hold. Like a defensive player might hold up here, or might be like kind of behind one of these boxes, kind of peeking this way, or they might have just gone up here and they're just holding this kind of tight angle, right? Or an aggressive player might end up going up here, right? They might, like at the beginning, run up and jump up on here, and they might be holding this kind of angle instead. So it just kind of depends what you are used to. Defensive players that hold cat typically hold cat. They might peek once, but they typically hold cat like right around here, just in case somebody enters. Where an aggressive player is either going to be out this way, peeking around here, or they'll be taking this peek from cat up into top mid. So just stuff to think about. I thought it was an interesting question to pose today about, you know, think about what kind of playstyle do you have, and then just really look at what you're doing and think about what can complement that really well. You know, like if I'm aggressive players typically are better on attack because it fits their playstyle. Like if I'm pushing into sight, right, I might smoke right, smoke left, and then I'll smoke up here, and I might just dash an updraft. I caught the edge of that thing, but like, you know, I'll like do this and end up here and see if I can pick anybody who's like behind us or in these areas, right? Like I'll kind of really aggressively go in versus slowly kind of making my way towards that. And that's just a playstyle difference. I like to be high risk, high reward. More aggressive players are usually high risk, high reward, and that's something that they enjoy. For defensive players, more passive players like to really slowly and methodically go through things. And like I said, there's no difference. There's no like good or bad in that situation. It's just what you do, what your playstyle is. So Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I hope this gave you some things to think about, kind of, you know, where you stand. I always thought that this was a good approach and a good idea. Watching some of my more defensive player friends hold these kind of more back angles, and as a defender, or as a defensive player, you typically give up areas of the map where aggressors like to hold those areas of the map. So that aggressive player like me, I'm going to take these peaks over here, I'm going to take them over here, because I don't want to lose mid. But a defensive player is okay with losing mid, and they're just going to... Defensive player could even hold this angle, right? Where you've given up mid control completely. But if they run up cat, you're primed. You know, you're right here, they run up, you just blast them, and they're done. So those are just, like I said, some things to think about. If you do kind of look at your own play style, let me know in the comments what your play style is. Like I said, both are fine, and the amount of tacticalness you put in either side kind of changes your dynamic of gameplay a little bit. I sometimes will play defensively, although it's not where I'm most comfortable. I'm more comfortable taking angles, clearing, peeking. I'm more of an entry frag kind of guy. And yeah, so hope this video gave you some good insight onto offensive versus defensive play. I hope you guys all maybe learned a little bit about yourself, thinking further along and ahead of what you like to do. And that's it. So thank you once again for checking out the video. Please be sure to like it if you did enjoy the video. Share it with your buddies if you liked it that much. Subscribe for more educational Valorant videos and content, and we will see you all in the next one.